Good evening. As the world looks ahead to President Trump's next administration, relations between the United States and Israel have come into sharp focus. Well, the two nations have a long history of strong connections, and with President-elect Trump's nominations of pro-Israeli politicians like Senator Marco Rubio and Governor Mike Huckabee, a revitalization of this special relationship looks to be on the horizon. Well, tonight we start our programme by delving further into this subject by speaking to the Israeli ambassador to Azerbaijan, Mr. George Deek, who joins us now in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us here on A News. I'd like to start by asking you about the future Trump administration. So I think many countries are starting now to think ahead to what their priorities will be when it comes to relations with the new Trump administration. Where do you see Israel's future relationship with the new president and his team?
Well, thanks for having me. I'll start by saying that our relations with the United States are bipartisan by nature. We had good relations with Democratic administrations as well as with Republican ones, and we strive, sometimes it's not easy, to maintain it as a bipartisan issue. So I want to say that we are also very thankful for the outgoing administration of President Biden, because throughout the last year, especially after October 7th, they have really stood with Israel when we were facing the most horrific attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Now, when we look forward towards the new administration of President Trump, it's important to remember that we have an experience with Mr. Trump. He was already president once, and what he did for Israel and for the Middle East, I believe, was tremendous. He helped Israel getting recognition for the Golan Heights, where today, when we see what's happening in Syria, we realize how important it is that we maintain, for security and other reasons, our presence on the heights overlooking the terrain below. Secondly, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, by that solidifying the recognition of Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the State of Israel. And thirdly, I think the most dramatic move for the betterment of the entire Middle East, that is the Abrahamic Accords, peace agreements that were signed between Israel and many of the Arab countries, peace that has withstood the test of war for the past year with Morocco and the Emirates and Bahrain and Sudan. So that is definitely something that we look back at, and when we look forward, we draw hope and we draw optimism from that background. And that is especially important today as we face an entirely different Middle East than the one Trump left as president the last time. Over the past year, 14 months more accurately, the entire region was at war, and a lot has happened. We started it in a very weak point, and now we're in a completely different point where the axis of Iran has been broken in the region with all its proxies. Syria is now a different country, as we have seen in the past few days. And our relations with the Arab world, the moderate faction in the Arab world, has been strengthening on the security agenda. So when we look forward to the Trump administration, we definitely have high hopes that he will be able to build upon the foundations that he has already put, the same foundations that were bolstered by the Democratic administration of President Biden, and then take it to the next step. And I believe the next step should be broadening the normalization countries. Hopefully Saudi Arabia would be able to join at some point in not far future, and following it the rest of the countries that has not. And I believe that we are getting closer and closer to a Middle East that is more peaceful, even though it sounds counterintuitive to what we see today.
And we know there's been a very polarized, at times poisonous debate, strong criticism on all sides. Where do you, when you look at the current state of peace and prosperity in the Middle East, are you hopeful? What's your assessment of the situation?
I would say I'm more hopeful today than I was a year ago. There's room for lots of hope, but there's also room for lots of caution, because some of these developments are still in the unknown terrain of what will be, especially when we talk about Syria, and I'll get to that. The Middle East was going in a certain direction for a long time. And I'm now going out from the micro level of what happened in Gaza, what happens in Lebanon, but going to the macro level. We were in a world where the Israel and the Arab countries were getting closer and closer in the normalization path of Abrahamic Accords, and at the same time, Iran has been getting bolder and bolder with its activity, strengthening and giving arms, training, funding, and direction to all its proxies in the region, and building more and more proxies, whether it is the Assad regime in Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Hashd al-Shab, the militias in Iraq, of course Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza and the West Bank, by the way. And they have basically, while we were building pieces and bridges with the Arab world, they have been trying to build a ring of fire around Israel, surrounding Israel by proxies that will fight and die so that Iranians don't have to fight and die. And at the meanwhile, Iran would continue to seek nuclear capabilities, which will provide it a kind of an immunity and umbrella against any future attacks against it. So what happened in the past year is that we have seen this entire architecture of the Middle East shifting. What happens now is that when October 7 took place, we were perhaps surprised by the timing and by also what happened and the devastation that took place in Israel. 1,200 Israelis died, many were raped, some were burnt alive, and over 200 people from Israel were taken hostage, kidnapped into Gaza, including Holocaust survivors, babies. Up to this day, there are 2 kids who are held hostage in Gaza. Kfir Bibas, who is, when he was kidnapped, he was 8 months old, now he's about 2 years. And his brother Ariel, who was kidnapped at the age of 4, and now he's between 5 and 6 years old. And all these people, some of them are still in Gaza. We have released about 117 hostages, including others by force, most of them by deal. And now we're looking to another 100 hostages. About 50-50 are alive and dead. So we have to bring them back home. But what happened after October 7 is that the Ring of Fire, led by Iran, was hoping to create a situation where it would be impossible for Israelis to live, that they would pack their things and leave and lead to the destruction of Israel. How do we know that this is their goal? Very simple, we listen to what they say. That's what they say is their goal, whether it is in Tehran or in Gaza or in Lebanon. So since October 7, we have been fighting this war of defense with very clear goals in mind: to return our hostages, to put an end and eliminate Hamas's military threat, and to make sure that Hamas will never rule Gaza again, and Gaza will never pose any threat to Israel in the future. On October 8, Hezbollah joined the war and started launching rockets against Israel from there without any provocation, just as part of their solidarity with Hamas in Gaza. So we found ourselves in a 2-front war, and quickly we found ourselves fighting alone a war on 7 fronts: Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and ultimately Iran. Iran, who is the head of the snake, the head of the octopus, sending its tentacles throughout the region, trying to surround us by fire, has attacked Israel directly already twice, in April and then again in October. So what happened next is that around the time of June, July this year, after we have taken most of Hamas's capabilities, and Hezbollah did not stop firing rockets at Israel, we engaged directly with Hezbollah in Lebanon in probably a historic operation. We have, in a span of 1 month, we have taken out the top leadership, the second-level leadership, and the third-level leadership of Hezbollah, both politically but mostly militarily, and of course the symbol Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. Many of them were decapitated. Their hands or eyes were taken out by the beepers, the pagers operation. And we have reached a situation where Hezbollah, which we feared would be able to attack Israel nonstop for months with thousands of Israelis dead, has become a much weaker organization. And now we have reached a ceasefire, which ultimately, the bottom line, the most important part of it is Israel can enforce the ceasefire by itself and not through proxies to make sure that Hezbollah will not pose a threat south of the Litani River. And then what we have seen happening is Israel attacking Iran in retaliation to the attack that took place in October. And over there, we have basically wiped out most of Iran's air defense systems, ballistic missiles production systems, and other capabilities that they had. And now when we have seen that the corrupt and vicious, now we see the pictures coming from Sednaya prison next to Damascus, we see how cruel that regime was to its own people, the regime of Assad. When we see that regime collapsing, we see the entire axis led by Iran, this crescent that they wanted to build around Israel, this ring of fire, has been completely shattered almost. Hamas is basically no longer posing a military threat. Hezbollah is on its knees begging for a ceasefire. Syria is no longer there to provide a bridge to Lebanon to rearm Hezbollah. And the entire project that, according to estimates, Iran spent $50 billion in the last years arming Hezbollah, has basically collapsed. Can you imagine how much better the lives of Iranians could have been if those $50 billion were invested in schools, hospitals, roads, bringing water to people? People live without access to water in some parts of Iran. People live without access, road access, flooding, disasters following each other in Iran. So instead of that, they have decided to invest it in their proxies. So now that project has been basically broken. It doesn't mean they cannot revive it, but it will take them a long time. And we're going to make sure that they will not be able to. And now we have to make sure, with the Trump administration coming in, as we said, that indeed we prevent Iran from ever having nuclear weapons. And if needed, we will do it in any means necessary, including actively and directly engaging kinetically in Iran. So overall, I think this opens a window for a different kind of architecture in the region. An architecture where the Middle East is not living under the looming shadow of the Iranian threat, but a Middle East that can hope for a better future. I said before, it's optimism not without caution, because what happens in Syria brought to the front of the stage dangerous actors, from jihadists to other kind of militants affiliated with Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra and others. So definitely we have to keep an eye and make sure that there's no new threat evolving there, especially not the revival of some kind of ISIS. But overall, the biggest strategic threat to the security of Israel and to the entire region, especially the moderate Arab countries in the Gulf, Egypt and others, has been Iran, still is Iran, and that's the threat that we've been fighting and pushing back. We said before, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, we will change the Middle East, and indeed we are seeing it change before our eyes, with Israel being victorious in this war and Iran being defeated with all its proxies. Of course, it's not as black and white as that, but this is the trend, and with the help of our neighbors and friends in the region, and with our friends, our allies in the US, we believe that a better future of more stability, tranquility, normalization awaits us in the future.
Ambassador, do you think that there could be an opportunity at some point in the future to collaborate in some way with Iran, to work together to try and solve some of these difficult problems?
The people of Iran are not our enemy. The people of Iran are probably one of the most friendly nations towards Israel in the region. We hear it from them. They tell us that on social media, on media, we have seen, I think last week, a guy went to the famous monument in Tehran, that bridge, and he took out and took a picture of himself with the flag of Israel, risking his own life. That's not a nation that seeks war with Israel. That's a nation that seeks peace with Israel. The problem is they live under a regime that oppresses women, that suppresses any dissent, that hangs more people on average every year than any other nation in the world, a nation that has put it as a motto to export the revolution and killing and destroying the small Satan, Israel, and big Satan, the United States, that has vowed to launch a genocidal campaign against Israel and wipe my country, my nation, out of the map. So I believe that the day that this regime will collapse and be removed from our world, which I believe could happen, and could happen not too far from now, then we will see Iran joining the nations as according to the will of its own people, joining the nations of normalization, joining the world of peace that we would be happy to create. Just think about how much Israel can contribute to Iran. What are the biggest challenges today in Iran? Water, agriculture, technology, entrepreneurship. These are exactly things that we are the best in the world in. If we can bring that to Iran and help the people there, they can live in a better country where they can have a future for themselves and for their children and for their children's children. And together we can build a Middle East that we could only dream on until now. And with Iran, with the Sunni moderate countries, with other partners in the region. I mean, just look at our partnership and friendship with Azerbaijan, and you see what is possible for Iran.
And turning more to that, the bilateral relationships between Israel and Azerbaijan, what are your priorities? What are the priorities of the two countries as you see it when it comes to working together over the next 12 months?
Well, first of all, we very much welcome the visit by the advisor to the assistant to the president, Mr. Hikmat Hajiev, who was in Israel just lately. He had a very good visit, meeting with our president, our foreign minister, and others. So we see that as an important visit and an important signal towards the trend of our relations for the next year. The relations between our two countries have always been strong because they are based on a solid foundation of friendship between nations. Even before there was a state of Azerbaijan and before there was a state of Israel, there was always friendly relations between Jews and Azerbaijanis living here, making this place a very unique model, not just in the region, but in the world. The idea that Jews lived here for at least 800 years, maybe longer, and there's not one single incident recorded of anti-Semitism, of persecution, of pogroms, unlike Russia, which is very close, or unlike Iran, which is very close, is remarkable. And I think this country can be very proud of its tolerance towards religious minorities in general, and specifically the Jews. So that foundation has enabled our two countries to build that solid relationship, which is built on various fields. The field of energy, lots of our oil comes from Azerbaijan, as you know, and now Azerbaijan, Sokar rather, is now going to explore. They want to tender for gas explorations in Israel. In the field of security, together fighting terrorism, countering terrorism, and making sure that our countries are strong to fight their adversaries. And more we see this on the people-to-people level and the business level and the cultural level. And that, I would say, what if I have to envision our relationship for the next 12 months, I believe that the opening of the Azerbaijani embassy in Israel last year, in March 23, has really set the base for Azerbaijan over there to export Azerbaijani goods, export Azerbaijani culture, and introduce it to the Israeli people, and to try to build bridges between our nations. Let's not forget that there are 80,000 people in Israel who have connections here, families, or they lived here in the past, they immigrated, and so on. So we have a very strong human bridge already, and now we're working on the bridges on the business sphere, on the cultural sphere, and on the people-to level. And I think direct flights and tourism is a major aspect of it. And I congratulate Azal for the decision to return its direct flights to Israel starting 30th of November. It was very timely, and the flights are fully booked, sometimes fortunately, sometimes when I'm looking for a ticket for myself, unfortunately. But I think that's a very good sign for the strength of the relations between the countries. So inshallah, well, in 12 months we'll be in even a better position, strengthening our strategic relations, as well as our people-to-people relations.
Ambassador, thank you so much for coming in and joining us on Newshour.
Thank you for having me.
In other news, today marked the 75th anniversary of the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a milestone in history that enshrined the rights and freedoms of all human beings. Well, to mark the occasion and to encourage more interest and detailed understanding of the Declaration, a campaign has brought together global artists to provide a modern take on the original articles. Well, earlier I spoke to the CEO and founder behind the campaign, Nicholas Lufrani.
So it's really incredible to have so many great artists, celebrities, people like Olivia Colman, Jude Law, Rita Ora, Dame Judi Dench, who have each one of them narrated one of these articles in rhyme. We also have a lot of influencers and mostly influencers who come from the human rights sector, who have been involved, including Commissioner O'Flaherty, who's the head of the European Commission for Human Rights. And so really a lot of fantastic people who have been involved in the project, which is it's really important when you develop a project like this, when you want to engage with the public, to have first great talents who are going to narrate the article in a way that's going to be engaging, but also famous faces that on social media you're going to recognize and want to stop and listen to what they're saying. So it's probably why the campaign so far is an incredible success. We started a few weeks ago. We've generated more than 200 million views already on all the social media platform. So it's on TikTok, on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, so all these social media platforms where you can follow Smiley News and look at all these films, which are also available on the smileymovement.org platform. And I think it's just important to understand that it's a vision. It's a vision for a better world, for a more positive world. It's a vision for where mankind should get to. I sort of say that for me, this declaration is a bit like the constitution of mankind. And it's really sets the structure for what the world, an ideal world, could be. And I really hope that it's going to, make people think that they want to be involved, think how they can be involved, and really trigger a lot of conversations and possibly impactful actions as well.
Well, in an exclusive for A News, let's now take a look at the film itself.
We stand today at the threshold of a great event, both in the life of the United Nations and in the life of mankind.
For our family human, there was made a pledge.
75 years ago, and it still has the edge.
For our dignity,
value,
freedom,
justice, and peace.
To put an end to oppression and help all fighting to cease.
Encompassing all and every nation.
This is our Universal Declaration.
Too many amongst us still suffer from plights.
We must compel on our planet, their
human rights.
We are gifted with conscience, freedom and reason, instilled in us forever.
It should not change with the seasons.
There's no second chance, no replay, no sequel.
We are born with one life.
And we are all born equal.
Wherever you're from, and whomever you are, no one at all from this declaration we bar.
Whatever your race, sex, religion, colour of skin.
Your thoughts, what you own, the country you live in.
Your politics or language
shall not be forsaken. We are all as one. No distinction we make.
Everyone needs the guarantee of their right to liberty and security.
But sadly, there are those that still need us to give the conviction and knowledge of their right just to live.
History proves we can never rewind to a time when many were cruelly confined to the service of others.
For there is no bravery
in servitude or slavery,
to treatment inhumane or cruel.
We shall not be subjected.
From degradation and torture is our right to be protected.
Acknowledgement by law, no matter what your position, geographical or in standing, is your right to recognition.
We must all remain equal, no lowest or highest.
And law shall follow suit and remain unbiased.
As too is our right to no discrimination
in law's enforcement or in its application.
Principles and precedents make up your constitution. But should your country not recognize this, you have a right to a resolution by national tribunal.
As it would be detrimental for you to lose a right that is universally fundamental.
Arbitrary arrest, exile, detention
shall be protected against.
Without any exception.
Should a person be tried, this trial shall be public, fair,
impartial, unprejudiced. Another right we declare.
You are innocent of a crime until a fair trial is built.
And all evidence is heard.
That leads to blamelessness or guilt.
Your right to protection is one that is absolute.
Alongside your family, your privacy,
home, honor, and repute.
Travel within or out of your country may be something you yearn.
Yours is the right to free movement.
But most of all, to return.
You have a right, worldwide, to asylum from persecution.
A right to be respected, but only revoked for an act like retribution.
You're entitled to nationality, another right that can't be wrong.
When your country shall recognize.
Alongside your liberty.
To belong.
At full age and without limitation comes the right to enter marriage and create society's primary group unit, something no one should disparage.
What is this group unit? Well, to answer honestly, it's a core of all society,
also known as family.
Owning property alone or with others is everybody's right.
And you shall keep what is yours without prejudice or fight.
Thought, conscience, and religion. You have the right to profess.
Freely, alone, or with others. No one should suppress the way you choose to manifest your worship.
And we proclaim that should your beliefs change, your right remains the same.
Your right to opinion and freedom of expression is one to be honored without repression.
Think or say what you wish and share ideas
through any media, regardless of frontiers.
Yours is a right to free assembly, but a gathering of peace.
Ensuring this meeting is calm offers no reason for it to cease.
You may organize or partake. Before this right to be upheld,
a person's association within a group should never be compelled.
Suffrage is your right on the declaration they wrote.
Meaning your country's government
shall be chosen by vote.
All peoples have a will that is theirs to protect.
And only they shall decide whom to elect.
Yours is the entitlement and the right to realisation,
be a member of society within your country's foundation.
Free development of your personality and dignity are indispensable, so infringing this right would be indefensible.
You have the right to employment, but also free choice.
And in this, we stand together, all people, one voice.
Hard work warrants the right to reasonable rest and limitation.
On our daily working hours and holidays.
With remuneration.
Your family's right to health and well-being are paramount and should be maintained. But if you cannot work, then this right shall be sustained.
Should your livelihood be altered by sickness, unemployment, or disability, widowhood, or old age,
this shall not affect your right to stability.
And when a child is born, they have the right to social protection, whether in or out of wedlock, and there shall be no objection.
You have the right to education and through a level elementary.
At this fundamental stage, school should be complementary.
Learn any profession that you wish and develop talents you want to use.
And the type of education for their child is a parent's right to choose.
It's your right to freely participate in the cultural life of your community,
whether that be a scientific or an artistic opportunity.
Your interests shall be protected, both material and moral.
And if this right is upheld, then there should be no quarrel.
To fully realize this declaration across every nation and border,
we shall all be entitled to a social and international order.
Law guarantees much in our lives and the crime that it fights, but its duties shall include protecting human rights.
Allowing one and all to feel connected in the way we behave and wish to be respected.
These rights and freedoms encompass all.
And no society, person or nation
should try to destroy them through misinterpretation.
Well, that's all we have time for on NewsHour tonight. Do stay with us on A News, and from all of us here on the NewsHour team, we wish you a very pleasant evening ahead.